Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank all of you for being here. We appreciate your presence here today. I want to start with you, Mr. Brainerd, if that's okay. As I understand it, at one point you were assigned in Iowa, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
In the Midwest, and while you were there in Iowa, you received the highest performance rating that you could possibly receive while you were working there, and also I believe that you received the Federal Security Director of the Year Award.
Yes, sir. I've received the Federal Security Director of the Year, Secretary's Team Award, the Gail Recidi's People First Award, which is one of the two top awards you can receive in our agency, and a number of other types of awards from local stakeholders, partners, fusion centers, things like that.
Right, okay. Well, then, as I understand it, they tried to reassign you to Maine?
Yes, sir.
They tried to reassign you to Maine after
they did reassign me to Maine.
They reassigned you to Maine after you received all these accolades and all these awards?
Yes, sir.
Do you believe that that was their way of trying to get rid of you, to reassign your position?
Well, I can't speak to their motives. It would be unfair for me to speak to their motives. I'll speak to facts.
Was it a bigger airport? Were you needed there? Or
no,
what?
sir. It was a smaller airport, less complex, fewer employees, fewer airports.
Why would an agency take one of their best employees? Obviously, they wouldn't have given you these awards if they didn't think you were doing a good job and put you at a smaller airport where your skills and your abilities would not be as useful.
Because according to them, the reason for the directed reassignment was because my skill set was needed for that particular operation. Unfortunately, there was another federal security director who had the same length of service in that I did and who would have been a high performer. That's the reason they provided. Each of the federal security directors, who happened to be the longest serving federal security directors in TSA, there was a caveat. There were at least 3 federal security directors that I was aware of that they did not move, but they had to sign an agreement to stay at their duty station 1 year, and then they would retire, and they forfeited their right to take any type of litigation against the agency. So
okay.
three people were provided an exemption with the caveat that they had to retire. July, right after that came, I think this bears worth mentioning, there was a VERA announcement which reminded everybody that putting pressure or coercion on employees to retire is a prohibited practice.
Okay, well, let me ask you, if you had and you did relocate to Maine?
Yes, sir.
When you relocated to Maine, was that a financial hardship on you?
Oh, yes.
And your family, I can assume it was.
Yes, sir.
Okay, was there a vacancy near where you were before, or?
No, there was no vacancy. There was in Maine a sitting federal security director. There was no vacancy. And if there had been a vacancy, there were certainly other people there at the operation qualified to fill these positions. It's important to note that when you're moving this particular skill set around the country, we have some 750 assistant federal security directors and deputy federal security directors. And the men and women that fill those positions, most of them are more than qualified to fill those positions.
Well, let me ask you, how much would it have cost TSA to relocate you to Portland, Maine?
They earmarked on the PCS moves in excess of $100,000.
I've got down here in my notes $113,000.
That would be accurate.
113. Is this happening elsewhere? Does this happen, Mr. Rhodes?
Sir, it happens everywhere. As you may read in my written testimony, I'd like to call the example of Mark Haught. This was a gentleman who was moved from Charlotte to Los Angeles. When he moved from Virginia over to Charlotte, the agents paid him $197,000 for one move. During that time, 2 of his sisters and his brothers died. His wife, after he got a directed reassignment to Los Angeles, was given a directed reassignment in Los Angeles back to Washington, D.C. on the opposite end of the United States. That's the punitive nature of directed reassignments and the high cost.
Let me make sure I'm understanding this now. So this is taxpayers' money that we're paying this?
Yes, sir.
So we could potentially be talking about millions of dollars in taxpayers' money to put...
You are talking about millions of dollars.
And not only that, but it also causes the employee financial hardship.
I'll offer you this. When they moved me to Iowa, my counterpart in Jacksonville couldn't come. He didn't come to Iowa. He was off on medical. So you know what they did? They TDY'd an assistant federal security director in Iowa, put that acting federal security director in a hotel for 9 months. 9 months. They put her in that hotel for 9 months, and they didn't fill that position until January of 2015.
Sir?
Go ahead.
Ed Goodwin from Florida. He was given a directed reassignment. He was supposed to replace Jay Brainerd in Des Moines. And his parents were 89 and I believe 95 years old. One of them had Alzheimer's. His daughter was a high school senior in her last year of high school, and he was underwater in his mortgage. And they gave him a directed reassignment. You know what he did? He quit. He resigned. And that's what and the New York Times wrote about him as well. That's what our agency does to people they want to run out.
Okay, well, we've got a number of moving parts here. You know, we've got what I consider to be wasting taxpayers' money that I'm very concerned about. We've got another concern about whether this is intentional and in a way to get rid of employees or to discipline employees. Mr. Chairman, I just have to tell you, I'm pretty disgusted right now, and I'm looking forward to us having another hearing. From what I understand, we're going to be doing that. And certainly we want to get to the bottom of this. Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, I'll yield back. Thank you all again for being here.
Yes, sir.
Thank the gentleman. I'll recognize the delegate from the district, Ms. Norton.